It's the last essay of the year. Ready to make it a big one? Welcome to the video for the last essay this semester. The research essay is going to give you a little bit more freedom, but it's also going to make you look into the past. The final essay is a research essay, and your subject for this is going to be the past. Specifically, when I wrote this assignment, I was thinking, what's the difference between the world we live in and the world they had just a century ago? And, well, it was a quite different place back then. Prohibition had just started. I wonder what they'd think about us legalizing marijuana. Women had just gotten the right to vote. 1920 was their first election. If you were a kid, you could go to school, or you could be working in the mines, as there was no federal child labor laws at the time. Transportation-wise, if you had a car, you'd have one of these, but chances are you wouldn't have a car because they were still very much a rich person's item. Penicillin had just been discovered, and insulin had just been invented, and a whole lot of medicine that we take for granted was brand new, cutting edge, or didn't even exist then. People still got leeched back then. I think I'd rather be in this world than then. I don't know about you. There were measurable changes, and not just the new inventions and things that came up between now and then. Population is drastically higher now than it used to be. Life expectancy is much different now than it used to be, much higher. Infant mortality used to be a really big thing, and it isn't anymore. In fact, if you want to trace a lot of big, important movements over the last 100 years, these charts are for the last 200, but we can extrapolate easy enough. The world is measurably not just different than it was in the past, but it's also a lot better than it was in the past. Extreme poverty used to hover around 78%. Now, 10%. Basic education in 1920 was 40%. Now 86% have basic education. Literacy is tremendously higher. Democracy is tremendously more frequent. Vaccination was not existent 100 years ago, and we prevented and eliminated many diseases thanks to vaccination. Child mortality, drastically lower than it used to be. So in a lot of measurable ways, the world is a lot different and a lot better than it used to be. But this brings up the question, why is this? That is the subject of your research essay. It will be a longer essay, 6 pages minimum. It will be a more research-intensive essay, 8 sources, including at least 1 book and 2 peer-reviewed articles. The concise version of the assignment is make an argument exploring the most notable change of the last 100 years. Standard warning, check your own copy of the major assignment sheet to make sure you have the correct due dates. The assignment, yeah, the world is different than it was back in the past. Our current existence would seem like science fiction in comparison to that of the average American in 1922. And there have been a lot of changes. Some of them are going to be more important than others. So this is where you come in. What do you think the most important change was? Or pick one specific interesting change and trace its importance to contemporary society. How exactly did your advancement change people's lives? Was it for the good or for the bad? Was this change available for everyone or only for a select few? In the assignment sheet, I have some working thesis statements. I also talk about the research proposal that you'll do, but frankly, you've got another video coming up going over that, so let's not dwell on it now. Instead, let me give you one change that I think is particularly interesting, and that is the founding of KDKA, Pittsburgh Radio, the first commercial radio station in the world. Now, we take mass media for granted in our day. We all have phones that will get us news from all over the world. It was not like that 100 years ago. There was some media, but radio was used governmentally during World War I, and 1920 was the first time we had a commercial radio station. So it was a new medium. What do you do with it? Well, as you'd expect, music could now be distributed widely to vast amounts of people. And it wasn't just looking at sheet music, it was being able to hear musicians play their music. Drama existed on radio a long time before it hit any other places. Mass drama, plays, performances. Yeah, there were movies, but movies were silent movies at the time, and it wasn't as big and revolutionary yet as radio was. In fact, a lot of the people who became the early stars of television and cinema, Orson Welles, for instance, got their start on radio. Radio is tremendously important because it wasn't something like a book that could only be experienced by one person at a time. It could be experienced by the entire family. And not just the entire family, but radio was broadcast over wide swaths of the country. In many ways, without radio, would we have a mass culture? Would we have an American culture? Not to the same extent that we do now. Radio was the first really mass culture in America. It unified us as a country, as a culture, in ways that we just weren't unified before. And in many ways, radio contributed tremendously to American identity. I think that's worth doing a research paper on. Now, what are you going to be able to convince me was an important change? The research essay is the last paper that you're going to do this semester. It's also a little bit larger than the others, so it's a slightly heftier task. And it's also due at the end of class, so that means that as opposed to the previous essays, you don't have time to revise this one, so we need to get it right as soon as possible. As soon as you have ideas as to what you might want to write, go ahead and message me via reminder, and I'll let you know if they're close to working or not. The sooner you get a start on this, the easier it's going to be. And just keep working on it. We'll have a video coming up which will go over the proposal process. And by the time you hit the proposal process, I want to have you with a working thesis statement and the beginnings of research. But we'll go over that in that video. Get to work, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.